All right, and just as we get started, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody to start, but please feel free to come off of mute to ask questions during the training. We have, there's about 15 of us here in this Zoom room, so that's a small enough group that, you guys can feel free to come off of mute and ask your questions as needed during the training. A couple people are still floating in, so let me give just a minute for that to slow down. And then we'll jump in. Hey, Denny, looking sharp. Out in the field today?
Sort of. I've kind of had a no good, very bad morning, so I was like, I'm gonna step it up. I'm gonna kind of glam it up a little bit and just make myself feel better.
I respect it. It's making me feel better too. So
good. That's the idea.
Good deal. All right, folks, it looks like everybody's connected to audio and things, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into our training. Thanks for hopping on today. This is our Matchmaker training for the Colorado Balance of State Coordinated Entry Workflows. This is part 2 of the user workflow trainings. So the Matchmaker training will review the standardized Matchmaker workflow that will be used to match eligible clients with housing resources and make referrals across the Colorado Balance of State. When I say this is part 2, you may or may not have attended the assessor training. That may or may not be necessary for your role. I'm going to cover part of our training today will include going over the steps that assessors will be doing. Those are your case managers and other folks out there completing BI SPID ads with folks. So that's what this training is. The assessor training was yesterday, and then we'll also have a provider training later today for anyone who has those housing resources and will be receiving referrals from matchmakers. So just to give you an idea of the different trainings that are taking place. So if you are a matchmaker or somebody who has a stake in case conferencing, you're in the right place for today's training. My name is Ashley Wynn. I'm the lead project manager for this project, and I work with the professional services department here at BitFocus. I've been working closely with the Colorado Balance of State leadership as well as other stakeholders throughout this process. I'm really excited to see it go live across the Balance of State. I'm joined today by Melissa Wheeler, a project manager for, who's also a project manager for the professional services department here at BitFocus. She's been supporting this work along the way, and she'll be helping out today, keeping an eye on the chat. So any questions you guys submit there, and supporting the presentation in a couple other ways today as well. I also want to give a shout out to Rachel and Denny, who have been working really closely on this process, tweaking things, and getting you guys the best system we can come up with. I'll also leave space for Rachel to chime in throughout this process because she's been, working closely with you guys at the regional level, attending case conferencing and things like that. So we'll make sure you guys get kind of that full, well-rounded context today. So as far as our agenda, we'll be talking about what happened before, and then I'll go ahead and orient everybody to the community queue within HMIS. We'll talk about making referrals from that community queue to housing programs. We'll talk about removing people from the community queue and what types of referral notifications will be going out when you do certain things in the system. We'll review the Colorado Balance of State by name list, as well as the case conferencing workflow process. And then we'll wrap up by taking a look at a few other reports that'll be useful for you as matchmakers and resources, how and where to submit any questions that you have. We'll also provide a demo of these steps today, in addition to the overview that we'll provide through the slides. So before we dive in, I want to define what a community queue and a matchmaker are. Essentially, a community queue is a list of clients who have been prioritized for housing resources. In Colorado balance of state, the community queue is generally used for permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing resources, with one region opting for an additional community queue for transitional housing. That's the Pueblo region. And then matchmaking is the process of actually determining what resources clients are eligible for and then actually making a referral to the resource. Matchmakers are the staff who will determine which client is next up and eligible for a particular resource based on eligibility criteria and community specific prioritization. And then after identifying a client, they'll send the referral to the program as part of the coordinated entry workflow. So a lot of this are things that may be happening just outside of Clarity right now. This will be kind of moving that process to within HMIS. And I should probably also give a heads up. Sometimes I go back and forth and I'll say Clarity and HMIS. I'll try to just say HMIS, but if you hear me say Clarity, those two things are synonymous. It means exactly the same thing. HMIS is the database, the homeless management information system. Clarity is the specific software for the one that HMIS that you guys use. So just to mention that in case I confuse people going back and forth with that language. So let's talk a little bit about what happened before. This is a simplified visual that shows the coordinated entry steps that happen before this stage of the CE process. As you can see, by the time matchmaking is taking place, clients have generally been through the diversion workflow, including the diversion enrollment, assessment, any relevant services, and they generally already have a coordinated entry enrollment, a housing needs assessment, and a referral to the community queue. I will say that's going to be true for everybody who's in that matchmaking phase where you're actually making referrals. However, there may be folks that you're case conferencing who haven't already gone through all those CE steps yet. So we'll talk about how those folks fit into the mix here with case conferencing as well. Any questions about this before I move on to talking about kind of the mechanics and introducing the community queue and matchmaking within HMIS? Essentially, these are the steps that your case managers or other assessors are out there completing. They'll be checking to see if clients have other safe alternatives before they come into the coordinated entry system. And then they'll also complete that coordinated entry enrollment and complete the housing needs assessment, which would be the appropriate VI SPDAT. Once they complete the VI SPDAT, they'll be referring those clients to the community queue, which is generally where you would pick up that client's referral and work on getting it to the right resource. So one of the first steps for anything that you're doing related to coordinated entry, you'll need to switch into the coordinated entry agency for your region by clicking the drop-down menu under your name in the top right-hand corner. We'll make sure you guys will get your additional agency access to the coordinated entry region that you need following today's training. We'll make sure everybody who attended has that access added after the training. And once that access is added, you'll see it listed when you click this drop down underneath your name. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like in Clarity just quickly. So when you're logged in, it will have your home agency here under your name. For me, my home agency is the system agency. So from there, I can click into the appropriate coordinated entry agency. You'll just have access to your region, not so much all of these regions. But you'll want to make sure you're doing all of your coordinated entry work under the coordinated entry agency. Okay, so let's talk about matchmaking. Let's talk about the matchmaking workflow. This matchmaking workflow will use a custom by name list dashboard in combination with the community queue within Clarity. I'll start by orienting everyone to the community queue And then we'll dive into the by name list and the case conferencing workflow that'll be used for matchmaking. That way you get the mechanics of where you'll be actually making the referrals from, and then you can start thinking about how you're going to supplement that process with the by name list dashboard and the case conferencing process. So to start, I want to provide that quick orientation of the community queue. Community queues are a tool used to triage and prioritize client referrals across programs, agencies, and systems of care. Most regions in Colorado Balance of State have one community queue designed for triaging those permanent housing resources. The exception to this is Pueblo, who will also have a community queue for transitional housing. And then Grand Valley, who also has a community queue for emergency shelter. You'll only have access to the queues for your agency's designated CE region. The only exception to this is for Pueblo and Los Animas regions, where each region's queue is accessible by users in both regions to facilitate referrals that may need to cross those regional boundaries. It's important to note that each queue is completely distinct from all of the other queues. So if a client is removed from one queue in a Balance of State region, it wouldn't affect their placement on any other queue across the Balance of State. And once I get through a few of these high-level things, I'll jump into the system and show you guys how this works in clarity. Let's briefly talk about the community queue interface and the different filters. You'll have a variety of different filters, including the ability to search by name, unique ID, or social security number. You'll be able to search by mode, which allows you to choose the assessment type. You'll be able to search by active agency. So that'll be the agency you want to send a referral to. You can search by project, and you can also search and filter by track characteristics. So we'll talk more about all these different options. So when you search by mode, you'll be the community queue will show the client's assessment score as well as prioritize clients with the highest score. So this is where you'll be able to select the family VI SPDAT if you just want to see your families that are on the community queue. And it'll only show you people who have the family VI SPDAT. It'll show you their scores, and it'll sort the list with the highest scores at the top. Same thing for individuals or youth. When you're searching by agency, you'll go ahead and select the agency that you're going to make a referral to, and then click search. This is what ensures the appropriate programs are listed for you to actually send that referral to when you go into the referral. For tracked characteristics, a track characteristic is a condition or set of conditions based on responses to various fields associated with the referral. So these are characteristics that allow matchmakers to search for clients who meet specific conditions. And it essentially allows you to add an extra layer of filtering to narrow down your search on the community queue even further. You'll see an icon next to, and this picture doesn't show the, here we go, this picture shows the icon. You'll see the icon next to the client's referral that looks like a little ID card, which is the track characteristic icon. So it'll show you what track characteristics a client meets. And you can see it on the community queue page as well as in the client's history tab if the client meets the conditions. This slide shows what the track characteristic looks like within Clarity. And just to share a quick example of when that might be useful. So say you have a program that only serves veterans, or say they only serve veterans who score within the rapid rehousing range on the VI SPDAT. With track characteristics, you can sort the queue to only show persons in the rapid rehousing score range. And then you can also track by the veteran sort track characteristic to help you identify those eligible clients with that specific criteria. In Colorado Balance of State, the standard track characteristics are veteran status and presumed chronic homelessness. The chronic characteristic is meant to highlight persons who may be chronically homeless. It uses the living situation fields that are entered at the time the client was enrolled in coordinated entry in HMIS. So I mentioned to assessors that they really want to be careful to make sure that information is accurate. I also want to make sure you guys understand as matchmakers what that field is looking at. So that track characteristic is going to look at the time they were enrolled, did the criteria that was entered indicate they were presumed potentially chronically homeless at that time. It looks at the fields including disability status, residence prior, length of time in previous place, number of times homeless, and total months homeless in the past 3 years. So this track characteristic is not the end all be all calculation of chronic homelessness. It's just to give you an idea of those folks who are potentially chronically homeless on your community queue. So let me, before I get into the referral aspect, let me get into clarity and show you guys the community queue in there. So you can always access the community queue from your homepage. You want to go ahead and click on referrals and then community queue. In this case, I'm already switched into the Northeastern Plains region, so I'm able to view the Northeastern Plains community queue. These are the sorting and filtering methods that I was mentioning earlier. You can sort here for a specific client. So obviously there's only one client on this queue, so it's not going to be super useful, but once you get a more full list, it's really nice to be able to just quickly search for the client you're looking for. As far as the mode goes, this is what I was mentioning. You can always find the assessment that you're using. So the VI SPDAT pre-screen for single adults, and click search. You'll be able to see the score and it'll be sorted by score. Same thing here. If I were to click on the family, VI SPDAT version 3 and click search, I don't have any families on my list right now, so I don't have any results. The track characteristic you can see right here. So this person is chronically homeless. You can also sort for that here. And it would filter out anybody who didn't have that track characteristic. You can also choose the sort method here. By default, if you don't have a certain mode selected, your community queue will be sorted by the oldest referral and the longest number of days pending on the community queue. Okay, so any questions about those steps before I switch back to the next phase of this, which will be actually making the referral? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions at this time, so I'll keep moving. Sorry, my face is like itchy for some reason. So once you identify the appropriate client on the community queue and you need to make a referral to that program, you'll go ahead and click edit next to the client you want to refer. So you'll see the little box with the pencil. From there, you'll select the correct program and then go ahead and click save. When you scroll down to the note section, you can enter a note if needed. And before you click to edit a referral and refer a client, you'll want to make sure you select the appropriate active agency on the community queue page. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if we wanted to refer this client tester, we would do that by clicking on the pencil here. But one important thing to remember is that you'll need to select the active agency for the agency that you plan to send the referral to. So in this case, if I'm referring this client to the permanent supportive housing program at Centennial Mental Health Center, I would go ahead and make Centennial the active agency and click search before I click into that program or to that client's referral. I know that's an easy step to forget. It's a really common one that folks forget. So just keep that in mind. If you don't see the program you're expecting to see to refer the client to, double check that you have the appropriate active agency here. Once you have that in place, go ahead and click on that edit option. And then you'll have the option to reassign the referral to a specific program. So I'm going to go ahead and send that referral to this PSH program by clicking Save Changes. When you click Save Changes, it sends that referral. Let me pop back over to the slides. Oh, wait, let me show you where you can add the notes if you'd like. That's actually just if you scroll down, you can add any general notes here. So there are a few automated community queue features that I want to highlight for you all. Some of these things can automate the workflow pieces and make things just a little bit easier for you guys as matchmakers. The first one is automated removal from the community queue. This feature will remove a client from the community queue when they've been exited from any program with a permanent destination. Using this feature ensures that the community queue stays up to date and that clients are being removed when they are housed by means other than through a coordinated entry referral. So if they're referred to a program and you accept that referral and enroll them in your program, they're removed from the queue by that means. But sometimes clients self-resolve or find other ways to get housing. Maybe they exited shelter to stay with family permanently. This function will allow them to automatically be removed from the queue in those situations. The second feature is the inactive referral expiration threshold. This can be set to indicate how long a referral can stay on the queue with no activity before exiting. And using this feature helps keep the queue up to date by removing clients who have had no contact with any program in the system for an extended period of time. In Colorado Balance of State, the threshold is set to 90 days. I also want to talk about referral notifications. So these notifications are configured so that providers will receive an email when a referral is sent to their program. Once the provider changes the status of that referral, then the matchmaker will receive a notification. So this is to just automate some of those communication pieces. So when I sent that referral to Centennial PSH, whoever is identified as the responsible staff member for that program would have received an email automated from the system saying, hey, you received a referral, and it includes a link where you can click and access the referral that you received. There are additional referral notifications configured so that providers are prompted to change the status of a referral. And this helps ensure that a long period of time doesn't go by without the referral being processed. So these features include the pending notifications, which means if a status of a referral stays pending for 7 days or more, the provider will receive a weekly notification until that status is updated. And what can also happen is if they continue to not address that referral, it'll eventually be sent back to the community queue through the community referral threshold. The pending notification is like when you send a referral to a provider, it's pending. When they acknowledge that referral, they change the status from pending to pending in process to let everybody know I received this, I'm processing it to determine eligibility and next steps. The settings right now are set where if the referral stays in that pending and process status for 14 days or more, the provider will receive a weekly notification until they change the status. And then this is the one I mentioned that if it stays in pending status for more than 90 days, the client will be sent back to the queue. So let's talk about removal from the queue. Clients may be manually removed from the queue if they self-resolve, pass away, or if they were added by mistake. You remove a client from the queue by accessing the referral through the client's history tab, scrolling to the section for remove from queue, select your reason, enter the date, and then click save. We also instruct case managers and assessors to do this. However, there may be times when the matchmaker is completing this step as well. It's one of those things where whoever knows the information first should go ahead and update it. You can access this remove from queue feature from the client's history tab or from accessing their referral from the community queue directly. And then I also wanted to mention that when you can always review the history of a referral by clicking on the edit icon and then scrolling all the way down to the bottom. And you can see every movement that's happened with that referral since the time it was made to the queue. So if their threshold expired and they were sent back, you'll see that. You'll also see any ways the referral was sent out to programs. So let me go ahead and just demo that piece, and then we'll start talking about the by name list. Okay, let me go back to our community queue. Where's my client? Oh, I sent the client. Let me get that client back. So, and this is just to give you a view of, so I sent that referral to Centennial Mental Health Center. So this is what it'll look like on the Centennial side when they receive that referral. It drops into their pending tab. So I'm going to go ahead and send this back to the queue just so that I can show you guys how to expire them. So the provider will have an option to deny that referral. Let me see, we'll say this client ended up not actually being eligible. So this will be how providers will keep you in the loop on what's going on with the referrals and why they denied it. Once they deny it, that client pops right back onto your community queue. If you need to remove them, you'll see it's right underneath this reassign option is remove from queue. You can go ahead and select the reason. Maybe they self-resolved. If they self-resolved, it's going to ask, where they went, what was that resolution? We'll say they're living with friends and family and save changes. Okay, so that's how you can go ahead and remove them. Now you'll see that client's tracked in the completed section. They're not tracked in the community queue any longer. Any questions about that piece before I start talking about the by name list and then case conferencing? Okay, sounds good. So the Colorado Balance of State by name list is a custom dashboard that was created to support your matchmaking efforts across the balance of state. The dashboard includes, and this is a screenshot here of the filters and all. The dashboard includes filters for region, county, process bucket, enrollment date, age, chronic status at project start, and household type. You can also sort each section of the by name list using the various columns that are included. You'll always need to start by filtering for your region and then clicking run. The overall dashboard includes 6 sections. There's an overall by name list that has all clients who are currently actively enrolled in either street outreach or a coordinated entry program. There's another table that includes another section that includes case conferencing assessment details. So for all clients who have a case conferencing assessment, you'll see, what their next step is, what their current barrier is, and who's assigned for those follow-up steps. There are separate sections for each of those process buckets, including, oops, I didn't mean to switch slides, including the assess bucket, navigate bucket, and match bucket. And then there's a separate section for persons who don't have any case conferencing assessment. So I'm going to demo this in just a moment after I talk through how to access it. I wanted to highlight a few things related to access. First is that only users who have access to embedded data analysis will be able to access the by name list directly. And then kind of beyond that, matchmakers will need to make sure they have the appropriate matchmaker access role within HMIS to be able to see all the relevant information on the by name list. So if you're not sure, or if you think you need an updated access role, go ahead and check in with the CCH team and make sure that you have what you need. Because you may be able to run the by name list, but without that access role, you won't, based on sharing settings, you won't be able to see everybody that you need to see on the by name list. So we want to make sure you guys all are able to seamlessly move forward with using this. So just double check if you're unsure about that piece. But essentially, you'll be able to click on reports from the menu at the top of the page. Oops, I keep my hand off this mouse. And then click on data analysis and expand the section for Colorado HMIS reports. And then you'll go ahead and just click run to open the by name list report. So let me just hop over and show you guys how that looks. So let me switch back to my coordinated entry. So this is your menu. You'll go ahead and click reports from there. And then click on data analysis. Once you get into the data analysis section, you'll click on the drop down for Colorado HMIS reports, and then you'll see you have your by name list here. You can go ahead and just click run to take you to the by name list. I like to right click on it and click open a new tab so that I can load that up separately while I'm still doing other things in HMIS. So I already loaded that up for us here. Ooh, don't log me out. And I already ran this for Northeastern Plains. So you'll always need to select your region, and then over here in the top right hand corner, you'll click run. It says reload right now because I already loaded it up once. You can also use these various filters, like incorporate additional filters beyond region if you want. Like you can list various counties, like if it's a subset of your region, you can look at just people in a certain access process bucket, the enrollment date, current age. One thing I want to mention about the chronic homelessness filter is that this is going to filter off of people who were determined chronically homeless at the time they enrolled in coordinated entry. Now, I know a lot of times your guys' project enrollment dates might be a little bit older. If that's the case, and you think if somebody maybe has aged into chronic status since they enrolled in coordinated entry, that's not captured at the time of project start, right? Because they aged into it later. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that this filter is based on the project start. And you guys do have a supplemental field to capture some of those folks who may have aged into chronic status. So let me show you these two fields in particular, because I know chronicity is a big prioritization factor and eligibility factor for most of your regions. Okay, where's my chronic at project start? Here it is. So when you use this filter, it's going to be basing it off of this field here, determine at project start. We added a supplemental field to capture some of those folks who maybe aged into chronic status right here, and it's called presumed chronic, yes, no. So as you can see, this is going to capture a little bit of a wider net in terms of clients who may be chronic today. Okay, it's going to be more inclusive versus exclusive. So it's going to include people who age into chronic status, as well as people who, based on the data they entered at the time they enrolled in coordinated entry, could have, some expired episodes of homelessness where maybe they don't actually meet chronic status any longer. But we wanted to make sure you guys, well, I shouldn't even say we, because this is all Rachel and Denny, wanted to make sure we all worked together to make sure that you guys had a field that was including everyone in coordinated entry who may be chronically homeless based on the latest information we have about them and their housing situation. So this field, because it is a custom field, you can't filter the whole by name list off of it, but you can absolutely sort by this column so that you can use it and see who's presumably chronically homeless as of today's date. A few other things I want to highlight about this dashboard, of course it's taking a minute to load, is one, it's sorted by unique identifier, and you'll have this unique identifier here on the left hand side as a frozen field. That means when you scroll, it'll keep the client unique identifier here on the left. If you want to freeze additional fields, so like if you want to keep the names available, you can click on these 3 dots right here for column options and click freeze. And now you can see the name and unique ID will be frozen there. So that can help you be able to see what you need to see. If you wanted to switch and see like, the CE assessment region, you can see it can freeze all those at the same time. So you can freeze as many fields as you want. Feel free to do this to help you kind of navigate and see what's going on this report as needed. You can also sort by multiple or different columns. So by default, your report is sorted by unique identifier. These arrows will allow you to sort by any column you want to sort by. If you need to sort by multiple columns, which I know you guys often do on your Google Sheet kind of current by name list, you can do that here as well. What you'll want to do is hold Shift and then click the columns in the order you would like them to sort. So I'm going to hold Shift, and then I want it to sort by region, age, and veteran status. And it's going to just take a moment, but it's going to load in order. So that would be like in Google Sheets when you select your sort order, you pick your first one, second one, third one, same thing. You'll click it in that order. Sort 1, sort 2, sort 3. If you're running the by name list multiple times within a short time frame, within a few hours or so, you can refresh the list even further by clicking clear cache and refresh. So if you're running it like once per day or something like that, you probably won't need to worry about the clear cache and refresh. But if you're running it within an hour or a couple hours of the last time you ran it, go ahead and click clear refresh. It's not showing up right now because I just ran the report, but you'll see a little indicator here that'll tell you the last time the data was refreshed to let you know if you need to clear the cache and refresh. It'll tell you if it was refreshed an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, or what. So based on the changes you're expecting to see, you might want to go ahead and refresh it. So beyond that overall by name list, this one's showing your case conferencing details. We'll talk more about the case conferencing assessment momentarily. I just wanted to show you how that looks on the dashboard side. And then you have your various process buckets so that you can just quickly reference these during case conferencing without having to like refilter the report or anything. You can just scroll to the different sections. And then the bottom section is clients who don't yet have a case conferencing assessment. So you could maybe target them for engagement or follow-up. So that's kind of a super quick orientation to the by name list. The next thing I wanted to go into is the case conferencing workflow. Let me go back to our slides. Oh, and I'm keeping an eye on time. I might need to talk a little more quickly. These are some of the things we just talked through. The last one I want to highlight is that different items have different refresh rates. So there are a few things, there aren't many things like this, but there are a few things, for example, your household type, that it's going to like calculate overnight. So sometimes when you refresh that list, you might not see those things updated, like household type. I've noticed that sometimes it'll say indeterminate household, but then the next day it'll update to the accurate information about that household. So you won't see too much of that, but just be mindful. So as far as case conferencing goes, we understand that case conferencing is definitely a strength across many regions in the balance of state. And so to build on that strength, we are going to review how the new Clarity workflow can enhance your current case conferencing process or provide a structure for your region to begin these case conferencing efforts. There are 3 different roles that we're going to reference related to case conferencing. These roles include the case conferencing meeting facilitator, the case conferencing note taker, and the case managers. Each of these roles has a unique and important role to play in case conferencing and matchmaking. So we'll demo this process after the slide presentation, but to give you an idea of our recommendations, ahead of case conferencing, you'll want to make sure that all relevant service providers have input any relevant data into Clarity. So if there's any information that's new related to prioritization, they should make sure that's updated before case conferencing. The meeting facilitator, prior to the start of the meeting, should go ahead and access the by name list. And if you already know how you're going to start, go ahead and get it sorted and ready to go for who you plan on discussing during case conferencing that day. You can also sort and filter during the meeting, but it can be helpful to take care of some of that ahead of time. The list can take a few minutes to load up, so it can be good to get that loaded ahead of time as well. Once the meeting starts, the meeting facilitator is responsible for presenting each client to the group for case conferencing and allowing other community members to provide updates about that client situation. And then the meeting facilitator should also project or somehow present the by name list for the group to see if possible while those conversations are taking place. Additional steps beyond the meeting facilitator, the note taker is ideally logged into Clarity during the meeting and able to pull up each client record during discussion and actually create a case conferencing assessment to document the details you guys talk about during case conferencing. And then at this point, the next step, it could be the meeting facilitator or it could be the note taker. I think folks have said that it kind of feels more natural for the note taker to do this step. But either way, someone can be designated to pull up Clarity and access the community queue and actually manage those referrals live during the meeting. So like if you guys decide like, okay, we're going to refer this client to, we'll use the same example from earlier, the Centennial Mental Health PSH program, you could actually send that referral during the meeting so that it's, they receive that notification. You could also, if you learn that somebody's in jail, you can go ahead and snooze their record, or if somebody's no longer eligible, you can go ahead and close out that referral. You can take care of all that during the meeting, depending on how quick you are and how quick those conversations are happening in the meeting. And then after case conferencing, you can refresh that by name list dashboard, and it'll populate the new case conferencing assessment details. And then you can use that information for follow-up and outreach and kind of triaging your case manager assignments. Any questions about that or how that fits into your process, or Rachel and team, anything to add about how that might look during the actual case conferencing meeting? I'm not seeing any.
No, but I think as a team, we'd love to be able to help as this is rolling out. Christine's brought up a good point in the chat about how soon regions should be switching from their current Google spreadsheets or Excel documents to the by name list within HMIS. And that might look a little bit different for every region. Pueblo, where Christine is from, is already currently entering BI-SPDAT, so they might have a fuller list of their folks all within HMIS, but that's something that we'll want to work with each region to make sure that all of the clients that are on your by name list are entered into HMIS, and then work with you to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the sorting features and accessing that list for case conferencing. Denny, do you have anything to add, or does that sound right to you?
You said it 20 times more eloquently than I ever could, Rachel.
Nice. Yeah, we know that's a big part of it, this actual transitioning your list. So yeah, we're here to make sure your list gets in accurately so that you can rely on it. All right, so let me talk briefly about the case conferencing assessment that I've been mentioning a lot during this training. This is an assessment that's intended to help triage clients through the process of obtaining housing. So this may include using the process buckets, so switching them between assess, match, and navigate to understand where the household is along their journey to permanent housing. And this assessment is really integral to the development and maintenance of the by name list dashboard. So this is kind of the dashboard has a lot of helpful information, but none of that information exists without completing the case conferencing assessments. So this assessment helps to show a client's progress towards housing by collecting region, county, process bucket, what their current barrier is, what this week's action step is, what the next step is, who the primary and secondary contacts are for case management, and then what their target milestone move-in date is. So here's just a quick snapshot of this case conferencing assessment, but we're gonna go ahead and provide a live demo. So let me switch back over to Clarity. And in this case, Melissa and I are gonna work together on the demo so that I'm not just going through and showing you the case conferencing assessment. We're going to kind of show you an example of how this can actually look during case conferencing when the assessment's getting completed. So for this demo, Melissa's going to play the role of the meeting facilitator, and I'm going to play the role of kind of both the note taker, because I'm going to show you on the screen what the note taker will be doing, and then also the case manager. So I'll be providing like updates about what's going on with the client as well. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the by name list dashboard that we've already loaded up for our case conferencing meeting and hand it over to Melissa as the meeting facilitator.
All right, great. Thanks, Ashley. All right, so imagine we're in a room, we're case conferencing, and we are wanting to talk specifically about the folks on this by name list. And the client that I want to talk about first today in this case conferencing assessment meeting would be test client. Does anybody in the room have a update on test clients? I see that they've already been entered into Clarity, but wondering where they are in the process.
Yeah, I have an update on test client. I am the case manager who met up with this client last week. We met them out there living on the streets in an encampment. We established they don't have other safe alternatives. They're definitely going to need our help getting into permanent housing. So they weren't ready to agree to services yet. I'm still building rapport. So this week I plan on going out there and taking a tent, providing some food, trying to build that rapport and see if they're going to be ready to complete a VI SPDAT after that. Okay, so now I'm switching gears. So that was my update as the case manager. While the case manager is giving that update, the note taker can go like this. Let me show you the workflow. So there are a couple fields here on the by name list where you can easily get directed straight to that client record. So one of them is this one, CE enrollment ID. If you click on the dots here and click go to program enrollment, it'll take you straight to it. From there, you'll click on assessments, and this is where you get to your case conferencing assessment. So while I'm giving that update, the case manager, the note taker can come in here and indicate, okay, engagement is the current barrier. This person's not, they're still building rapport, they're not ready. My action step is that we'll take a tent to the client this week. And then hopefully the next step is a housing assessment, depending on whether that client is open to it. Additional things to note is that these case managers will be able to document that they're providing the tent and these services as these things are happening. If I'm the person who needs to follow up, you can go ahead and, you'll indicate that person here in their agency. So we'll say I'm at Centennial. You can indicate if there's a second point of contact in their contact information, but no need if there isn't. And then you can go ahead and enter a target milestone move-in date, which for this client, I'll go ahead and put October 6th, a few months out, just for good measure. And then you go ahead and click save, and boom, that means that client's information is already going to be updated on the by name list later when you go refresh it after case conferencing. And we hope that that step will save you guys a lot of time taking notes, entering them here, moving them there, things like that. So you just enter that stuff straight into the system, save it, it'll populate on your by name list later. So basically that's it for that client. And then we can move on to the next. So I'll go back to the by name list and hand it back over to Melissa.
All right, so the second person client on our list today to talk about on the by name list is the client named Tester. This client I was researching before this meeting has already been entered into Clarity. They're working towards housing, but I wonder if there's a case manager in the room that might be able to give me an update, since we have already done an initial kind of an assessment with this client.
Yeah, I have an update on this client. So last time we talked, we noted that the client needed a state ID. So my action step was to help that client get a state ID. And then once we have that, we'll be able to start searching for housing. I was able to help that client get a state ID. So we'll be able to move on to the next step. I wanted to mention this. So this client already has a case conferencing assessment from a couple of weeks ago. You always want to start a new case conferencing assessment each time you do case conferencing on a client. That'll keep all the history intact and the dates and the timeline. So for this time, I'm going to go ahead and start a new case conferencing assessment, and I'm going to update this information. So this client's already been assessed. We're going to go ahead and switch them to the match. They got their state ID, so now they're searching for a unit. Okay, so this week's action step is no longer to assist the client with a state ID. It's going to be to search for housing. And then next step would be intake. You can keep your same contact person. It's going to carry all that information over. You can keep the target milestone move-in date or keep adjusting that as needed, and then click save. And that completes the case conferencing there for those two clients. I'm going to go ahead and reload this, but I'm going to talk about other things while it's reloading. But that's essentially how this can be used during your case conferencing meetings. The only other things I wanted to talk about with today's training was just to show you a couple other reports that may be useful for you guys in this process. And I'll move through it pretty quickly because I know I want to leave a few minutes for questions. One of them is the referral statistics report. This is a report that can show you who's been referred into your agency or out from your agency. There's two different versions, inbound and outbound. This can be really handy for Matchmaker because you can run this from your coordinated entry agency and see all the referrals that have been sent out from the coordinated entry agency. So that can show you, where did I send referrals? You don't have to click through each one or anything like that. I'm going to show you an example, so I won't leave it on the slide. And then the other one is the coordinated entry community queue detail report. This one can just show you tons of helpful details about clients who are on your community queues, including race, veteran status, disability, ethnicity, etc. I ran both of these reports just to give you an idea of what they look like. So let me go ahead and open them. This is the community queue details report. As you can see, it just gives you some demographics. It'll also give you, scores, days on queue, with some basic stats about what's going on with your community queue and who's on it. The referral statistics outbound. Oh, nice. The example I ran doesn't have any referrals on it, so that's handy. But it'll give you an idea how many are in pending status, how many are pending in process, completed. expired, denied. So that can, and then it'll also give you denial reasons, which can be really helpful to keep an eye on, help you make more accurate referrals over time. If a certain program keeps denying your referrals for eligibility, find out what their eligibility requirements are, and you can make, more accurate referrals from there. So I know I just unloaded a ton of information, but I wanted to leave the last few minutes for any questions that folks have, comments, thoughts, or things folks would like to add. I'm also going to check the chat, see if there's any lingering questions there.
I think we're good. Actually, most everything has been answered by balance of state leadership.
Nice. Love it. If additional questions come up, here is your HMIS support email. You can always email colorado.hmis@coloradocoalition.org, as well as accessing, submitting requests through the help desk right here. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you have. One last thing I wanted to mention to folks is we will have a dashboard training on July 27th next week. So let me drop the registration link in the chat for that. Let's see. So that folks can register.
Just a quick note while Ashley is dropping that in the chat, wanted to remind everyone that this is being recorded, and we will send that out along with the slides that were used today for everybody to use. So just wanted you to feel confident in the fact that you will have all of these resources just as soon as we can get them edited and ready to go, hopefully by the end of this week, early next week.
So I'm putting the link for the dashboard training, because this dashboard training will go over not only the Colorado Balance of State by name list dashboard. There are a variety of additional dashboards that may be of interest to you as coordinated entry leads, matchmakers, stakeholders, and those include a Built for Zero dashboard, a timeline and outcomes dashboard that can help you see how people move through coordinated entry to permanent housing, demographics dashboards that'll show you, who's in your coordinated entry at each phase, and then a data quality dashboard that can help you monitor what's going on in your region. So if you want to learn about those dashboards, please feel free to register for the dashboard training, and we'll dive into details about those at that time. But if there are no remaining questions, that's going to be it for today. Provider training does start in 1 minute. It is going to be on a different Zoom link. So I'm going to close this one out. And then if you're planning on attending that training as well, go ahead and go ahead and join that separate meeting invite, and we'll see you over there. If you're not attending the provider training, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. It's been wonderful talking through this process with you, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, folks. Have a great rest of your day.
Hi, everyone.
All right.